I said on Monday that I think that week 6 was shaping up to be my favorite main slate we've had so far this year for DFS. And we're here on Thursday, and I kind of still think that's the case. We've got some running backs we can feel pretty good about, lower range guys. We got some games we feel good about stacking. We've got high upside quarterbacks, high upside tight ends. Can we jam them all in? I don't know, but it's kind of fun. I'm excited to break things down from a DFS perspective, let you know which guys we're targeting and which guys we might be a bit lower on, and getting you set for the week 6 main slate over on FanDuel. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the senior managing editor of numberFire.com. Brandon, week 6 cometh. How you doing?
Good. Sometimes this slate is reminding me sometimes of when I try to explain to people what I do for a living, and you have different gradations of
I work in sports analytics.
I can go that route. I can say do you know what fantasy football is? That's the flow chart. That's the starter. And if they don't, then I just say I work in sports.
I had someone, I told someone I work in DFS or daily fantasy and betting, and they thought I was like Hitch. I think I might have talked about this. Did I talk about this?
I don't know what any of this means.
Have you seen Hitch with Will Smith? He's like a date doctor.
Actually, yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I said daily fantasy and betting, and they thought I said betting, and that sounds PG-13 at best. And I was like, no. I'm a nerd who looks at spreadsheets all day. That's not my thing.
You gotta be predisposed to think that way. I think that's kind of a leap, but
yeah.
Anyway,
he was an elementary school teacher. I don't know if there's a correlation there or not.
Long story short, sometimes when I just try to explain to people what fantasy football is, if they follow up, usually I try to back out of that conversation. I get the
Isn't that your default? Trying to back out of conversations? That's your baseline?
Yeah, for sure. But sometimes you get so you just why don't you just play the best players? And I was like, I think that fits this week. Just play the best players.
Yeah, I agree. Let other people make mistakes. And I think that's something they might do. Looking at some projected roster rates for this week, we might see mistakes out there. We'll break those down. We'll let you know why we're not on those guys and get you set for week number 6 here on FanDuel. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts, because NBA just around the corner. We've also got twice weekly NFL shows, PGA as well, NASCAR for Vegas coming up tomorrow. That'll be up there. Homestead next week, then Martinsville, then Phoenix. A lot of fun. Who could possibly hate on that? All that good stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. So go get that wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe. And if you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review as well. FanDuel and GMC are back to bring you the GMC Sierra Mountain Climber Pick'em, a free-to-play contest series that gives you a chance to win a share of $10,000 in FanDuel site credit every Sunday, courtesy of GMC. Here's how it works. Every Sunday during the NFL season, you'll have a chance to answer questions based on the day's 1 p.m. and 4:25 p.m. Eastern games. The more questions you answer correctly, the higher up the mountain you'll move. If during any week you answer every question correctly for a perfect score, you'll reach the summit and win your share of $10,000 in site credit. The contest series is now live, so head to FanDuel.com/free/contest/GMC to start climbing the mountain. FanDuel.com/free/contest/GMC. Let's dig into the slate overview for week number 6. And Brandon, I think that honestly, everything we said Monday holds, where it's a slate where we have a lot of mid-range running backs who are in phenomenal situations, despite being underdogs, which we'll talk about later on. We've got some high-end quarterbacks, high-end tight ends. And the question is, how do you balance those things? So that's my slate overview, is that. What is standing out for you this week?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of running backs that historically at the top of this, player pool, we'd say, oh, we got to play, I'm not going to say Nick Chubb, but assuming Saquon's good to go, like Saquon, McCaffrey, Fournette, Dalvin, but Fournette and Dalvin have some interesting roles. So I think that it's a case of let's double check, make sure we're okay not being as heavy on those guys. But honestly, the overview for me comes down to receiver. I stared at receiver for like 30 minutes this morning trying to figure out which 3 guys to recommend as loves.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily because the top of the position isn't appealing. We have appealing names up there, but if we want to play Travis Kelsey and Mark Andrews at tight end, if we want to play those high upside quarterbacks, even with like some mid-range value at running back, like you got to get some value receivers somewhere. But I think it's I think receiver could honestly make or break the slate because it's very easy to guess wrong and overhype some guys with bad roles. And I think there's at least one guy that we talked about a little bit on Monday, and like Randall Cobb, and I'm not quite there anymore.
Correct.
But I did say I wanted to take a deeper look, and I think that like figuring out value receiver is a big part of the equation for me this week.
Or finding out if you can avoid value receiver. You won't be able to avoid it entirely, but can you limit your exposure to that pool of players in general? So that would mean most likely either using Gino Smith at quarterback or foregoing Kelsey and Andrews at tight end, which is a scary proposition because you're betting against Lamar, betting against Mahomes, betting against Allen in amazing game situations. And the odds they hit are pretty high this week. And if they hit, they hit. So I think that it's scary, but there are a couple different ways to play this. We'll break down those and get you set for this slate here today. Let's start things off, though, with some injuries. Sounds like Skylar Thompson will start for the Dolphins this week. Tua is back at practice, and Teddy Bridgewater sounds like he'll be active, but Thompson is the likely starter. Adam Schefter reported the team is optimistic that Tyreek Hill will be good to play. Raheem Mostert missed practice Wednesday with a knee injury. That kind of happens a lot with him, so not a huge shock, but are you interested in any of the Dolphins with Thompson as the assumed starter this week?
I'm going to talk about this game in the trend section with the pace. Should we circle back or should I just
a brief thought here? We'll circle back later.
I'm always okay with Tyreek Hill if I can get him in. I think Mostert might be in a little bit in play if he's healthy, just because of the trends that they had with Thompson under center. But that's about it.
I think this game is rough. I want to focus on better games. Like I like Tyreek Hill and I like Jalen Waddle, but if the opportunity cost is foregoing Marquise Brown in a very good game, foregoing Deebo Samuel, foregoing Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, I'm okay being a bit lower there.
The models love Deebo this week.
They love Deebo every week. Now they've caught on to how to project him, right? No. Anyway, Mac Jones got in.
Working out.
Not great. We'll talk about that later too. Mac Jones got in a limited session Wednesday with his ankle injury. Might return to face the Browns. Bill Belichick revenge game, by the way. Just keep that in mind. Damian Harris is likely to stay with a hamstring injury, even though he is limited. The Patriots are just giving double-barreled middle fingers. They know he's going to sit, but they're just doing this to mess with you. So how does Mac versus Bailey Zappi impact your interest in Ramondre Stevenson at 75, assuming again that Damian Harris sits, which I think we could do.
Usually quarterback play does impact how I view an offense a lot. I don't know if it does a ton in this instance. We're dealing with small samples early on in the season, but let's just say none of the Patriots quarterbacks have been particularly good or even average. So I don't view it as like a huge change one way or the other. Maybe that's just me, but I have a feeling that you think it's about the same.
Yeah. Yep. I think that they've been competent enough under Zappi where we're not saying this team is a cross-off if we're going to get a featured running back, which I think we will get in Ramondre Stevenson. So Stevenson is one of those mid-range running backs who we should adore this week. Zappi has been fine, honestly, on his 39 dropbacks this year. So I think it's okay regardless. It would be an upgrade with Mac Jones over Bailey Zappi. I'd feel better about Stevenson, but I'm going to be very high on him regardless.
I agree with that.
Jameis Winston returned to a limited practice on Wednesday. He has missed the past 2 games with a back injury and didn't practice at all last week, so this is an improvement for him. But Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, Jarvis Landry all sat. Landry should be fine, but Olave in concussion protocol. Thomas, Adam Schefter tweeted that he thought Thomas would play this week. He didn't say thought. He has more conviction in his things than I do. But are you seeing anything worthwhile in this offense with so many guys banged up?
I would like Olave to come back, just because there are almost no good plays in the 6,000 range, specifically at receiver. I'm not saying there are no good plays, but having him open up would really make me take a longer look at that range in particular. But Olave, he's got a 48% air yard share since week 2. I know that we got to adjust for all the injuries and everything, but it's clear that they want to get him involved. I think that would be appealing. I'm probably not going to go at any of the other receivers. And unfortunately, I think Alvin Kamara's salary jumped up too much for me, especially with old Taysom back ripping off
I mean, I think
touchdowns.
that I'm not worried about that as much because Kamara's red zone role has still been pretty good, and like find me a guy who can't get pilfered at the goal line. So I don't care as much about Taysom, honestly. It's more so about the salary, which you alluded to. $8,100 for Kamara. Team's banged up, facing a Bengals defense that has played really, really well this year. So I'm okay being a bit lower on that game in general and that team specifically. T. Higgins missed practice Wednesday with his ankle injury. It seems likely that he plays, but clearly he's not healthy yet. Let's assume that Higgins plays, but is still banged up. No full practice Friday. Marshawn Lattimore iffy on the opposing side. Would you be interested in Jamar Chase for tournaments if we get those stars to align?
Yeah, I think you'd have to consider it because anytime a superstar receiver goes overlooked, it's got appeal in DFS because he can lead this slate in FanDuel points. I have him 7th among all receivers in expected FanDuel points per game, 5th among receivers on this slate, but he is underperforming that. I can't play T. Higgins because
right.
He might just stand on the sideline. I do think that Tyler Boyd, Hayden Hurst could be a little bit interesting if we like this game more. Because we got two phenomenal games, and unless you just stack those games, you're going to be looking for other stacks, secondary stacks. Like, there's no reason this one couldn't be, the third best game of the week or the best game of the week. But it's a way to, as we say, like, being different by playing Jamar Chase without being like stupid.
Also, his salary is not bad. Chase's salary is $8,100, and like he's in a range with Stephon Diggs, kind of. Marquise Brown is there in one of the better games, surrounded by Debo, Locket, Metcalf. I don't think even if Higgins sits, we'll see Jamar Chase get super, super popular. So he wouldn't be a core play for me just because my core revolves around stacking the games I want to stack, and this will not be that, but he would still be someone I'd actively try to squeeze him in at times in order to make sure I have exposure to him.
If we don't get Higgins, would you play Tyler Boyd?
No. Would you?
I think I might because of the salary.
What's the salary?
6,000, which is probably too high specifically for Tyler Boyd, but it is very helpful this week because we have undersalaried running backs, so I can overspend on some guys at other positions, and with anyone at or below 6,000 receiver, it's hard to find.
The counterpoint to my saying no to Boyd would be that he has 3 times as many deep targets as Michael Pittman this year, so you could go that route. It is 3, but that's still 3 times as many as Michael Pittman. Bit of a surprise to me, but Jonathan Taylor missed practice Wednesday due to his ankle injury. I thought he'd be good to go, and he's not. Nyheim Hines limited following his concussion. It makes it seem like Nyheim Hines might actually be more likely to suit up than Taylor, which I'm honestly pretty surprised by. But if that were to happen, where would you wind up on Hines at $5,500?
Yeah, I thought for sure based on how it looked that he would be kept out based on other happenings in the league.
Yeah.
The models would love him at 55. I would understand it. He did play the first 3 offensive snaps in that game. It's unclear. What's that?
He had 2 targets as well in those first 3 snaps and a carry. He had every single opportunity.
It's unclear like how much of that would stick now that he's like would be coming off of all concussions are serious. So like, but a serious concussion.
It looked bad. Yeah, for sure.
I would be open to it. I usually try to avoid second time around divisional matchups as much as I can. We already get one this week with the Colts and Jaguars, which is strange for week 6, but that salary would come with enough reprieve to play Kelsey. I'm not saying Hines would be in my main lineup or a cash game lineup, but at that salary, I think it's worth taking an extra look. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that. So I think Devin Singletary, it seems like is tracking to be popular this week. Sorry, Devin single digits is tracking to be popular. I'd prefer Hines over single digits by a pretty wide margin, personally.
Yeah.
But it's also, I feel a lot better about Kenneth Walker at 65. I feel better at Breece Hall 71 and Stevenson 75. So would I be okay taking that reduction in order to get an upgrade elsewhere? Probably at times, yeah. I think I would use Hines if that were the scenario, but it is a downgrade. Philip Lindsay got banged up, I think, at some point last week. He wasn't at the open portion of practice, and the bummer is he's not on the active roster because he's on the practice squad. So he's not on the injury reports. We don't know what's up with him. We don't know if he got in a limited practice or what. I don't know. So it's a weird situation. It's a messy one. If JT does play, how much do you downgrade him now, knowing that he couldn't practice Wednesday? Because I think that actually does negatively impact him for me.
So Jim and I are going to talk about 3 running backs in particular a lot. They're just our guys this week. Ramondre Stevenson, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. I thought that JT was 4th or even, above, just in that like top tier because the salary is what it is. And his workload's been, for the most part good. And if Hines was out, I was thinking more receiving work. If he's not going to be 100%, I can't really consider him for like the cash game lineup. I'm still nervous because at a certain point, some of these backs who have their salaries go down are going to have their classic games. Mm-hmm. Because not all of them have drastically different workloads than they've had in the past. Taylor's still capable of that, but with the divisional matchup again, the Colts didn't look particularly good in this one. It was a week 2.
I thought they looked great. As someone who had the Jags money line, I thought they looked great. Huge fan the way they played.
So I would say like a pivot to Taylor, but I don't really know if I'm playing any Jaguars to bring it back with. So I'm probably going to be very low on Taylor when I thought I'd be a lot higher on him.
Yeah, I am far more likely to use Hines if there's no Taylor than I am to use Taylor if he gets a full practice Friday. Sure, I'll get some, but it does downgrade him for me. The fact that he didn't practice Wednesday.
It's just one of those things. Like it's easy to sit here and say now, but
I think the one thing that could change it is if he magically returns to a full practice Thursday where it's like, oh, he's just resting up and blah, blah, blah. That would actually change my tune. So keep an eye on the injury report because that should influence things for you. Jags defense has also been pretty good against the rush this year. So that's worth keeping in mind as well. Yeah. Kyle Pitts returned to practice Wednesday with his hamstring injury. He sat out last week. But how would you view Pitts if he's able to play against the 49ers?
Look, if you have Kyle Pitts in your season-long teams, it's his path to a ceiling, just like with 1 or 2 downfield targets, if he gets them, is still enough to keep playing him. It's not bad enough where you're benching him over other options in season-long, but this is not what we're talking about. We're talking DFS here, and I have a really hard time talking myself into Pitts. I comprehend how the ceiling is still there, but San Francisco has actually been really good against tight ends, 5th in adjusted FanDuel points per target according to my numbers. I don't think I could play him unless I'm trying to play 49ers on the other side.
Yeah, their defense is pretty banged up right now, but it sounds like Nick Bosa is actually going to play potentially. I think he practiced on Wednesday. That was kind of a surprise to me. The secondary is more banged up, but it's not like there are no guys down there with a path to yardage upside. Like Kittle in that same game, if you want to use an underperforming tight end, why not just use George Kittle instead? David Njoku 59 actually has yardage upside. You go with the target guys in Higbee and Ertz, but not a lot of upside there. So I think for me, I'd rather go elsewhere. Specifically Njoku, I think is my favorite lower salary tight end for this week. The Cardinals backfield's a mess. Darrell Williams won't play this week. James Conner didn't practice Wednesday with rib issue. The Cardinals are going to, guaranteed, 100% guarantee, game time decision will be the label on James Conner heading into Sunday. I can guarantee it. I can see it now. So we're likely heading that way. But how would you view Eno Benjamin if both Conner and Williams ultimately wind up sitting?
Yeah, so this game could get pushed back based on the baseball schedule of the Mariners and is it Astros, right?
You watched the game. Why are you even at?
I actually did not. I said I watched Mariners Blue Jays. I watched an inning of
I thought
that.
you watched this week too.
No, I said I was gonna, but I didn't. I got real bored real fast. I put on some old wrestling. So that game could get pushed back to a 5:30 start. It would still give us a little bit of time to figure out, based on inactives, like how to switch things around. But you really got to be around for that. I think Benjamin's at 6,300 is in the conversation. However, I think he would be part of game stacks only. I don't think that there's enough there to want to go to him over Walker. I think that's getting too cute. Keontae Ingram would play, right?
Yeah, I just picked up Keontae Ingram in Dynasty League, I think. I don't know. I picked him up somewhere this morning. I think you would factor in at some point.
Game stacks only, I think, for Benjamin.
Benjamin versus single digits.
Probably Benjamin.
I might go single digits there, but it's at least a thought. Benjamin versus Hines, I'd go Hines.
I'd go single. I'd go Singletary too, I think.
Yeah. Who?
He's gonna score.
No, he's not. He can score and still not get 10 FanDuel points.
I'm not gonna play him. He's gonna score on like a little dump off from the 10. He's gonna get like 14. He's gonna be fine. And then I'm going to be sweat like in the first half, and then I'm going to be sweating.
You're
like
right. It's going to happen right away. So you're like, oh gosh, what have I done?
And then they're going to get in the red zone and be like, all right, he's out there, and then they don't even look his way. But it is what it is.
Devin single digits will score a touchdown and still get fewer than 10 FanDuel points. If I could same game parlay that on FanDuel, I would happily, without a doubt. Speaking of the Bills, Isaiah McKenzie cleared concussion protocol. It will be good to go against the Chiefs. He missed last week, and Gabe Davis went nuts on just 6 targets, but like that's what he can do because he's Gabe freaking Davis. Does McKenzie's return alter your view of Gabe the Babe this week?
It would a bit. Do you know Davis's? I was going to do market share, like his highest single game market share this year for targets.
Probably last week, honestly.
It was 16.7% on 6 targets. He's got 2 games with 6 targets, one with 5, one with 3. I understand that those are hyper efficient targets usually.
Yeah.
But like that second touchdown, first of all, the first touchdown, I'm not taking anything away, but like he just ran past everyone, which he has the ability to do.
Yeah. Did that last year against this team.
Again, like I before I even say it, I understand like take away all the good plays and like what do you have? Like if he didn't just run past everyone for a 98-yard touchdown, and he also didn't one hand like a disgusting touchdown that probably was like pass interference. I don't know if they threw a flag on that, but it looked like it was pass interference. Like there's a path to a game where he gets 4 targets, 5 targets, 6 targets, and just doesn't catch those ones, and he gives us 3 FanDuel points.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah, definitely within the range of outcomes. I think for me, like that's why for a cash game, I would not touch him. Like the usage is not there for that.
Correct.
But like for me, for tournaments, all I care about is ceiling. And his ceiling is better than everybody in the 6,000 range, despite the low usage. It is, maybe not. Well,
who?
If Olave were like fully healthy,
I'd
probably say Olave. But like outside of that, it's very definitively Gabe. So like I don't care about floor. Ignore the floor. I care about like ceiling. His ceiling is very, very good. I think the concern is, does he wind up being more popular than he should be once we factor in the fact that McKenzie is back this week?
I don't think he's shaping up to be very popular.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know.
It could be wrong, but I think that I've kind of gotten the same vibe because everyone's like, oh, I'll just go to Stephon Diggs. I said that Monday, so like I'm part of the problem there. But like,
so the thing is, what I anticipate happening is that the various optimizers are going to love
Diggs.
They're going to love Diggs, but they're going to like Walker. They're going to like Brees. They're going to like Nyheim Hines if he plays and Taylor doesn't. Like, and then you naturally have more salary to spend a receiver. And like we're on board with that this week for the most part.
Yeah.
But that's going to leave like a pretty glaring gap in that 6,000 range where nobody like really jumps out. So I don't think Davis will be that popular. So I have a little bit less fear of like not playing him. am going to play him in game stacks, but like what we're talking about is like the difference between tournament lineups and like cash game lineups. I think he's a great tournament play. I would not play him in a head-to-head.
I would not either. I agree with that. Great tournament play. I thought he'd be more popular than he's tracking to be right now. I'm surprised. Maybe that's because DFS players are smarter than I was giving them credit for, and they realize, okay, it was kind of fluky, but also like he can have those flukes because of the way he gets used, because of how good his quarterback is, because of how good he is, because of how good this game is. So I would go back. Like I was looking at like too high defense numbers this morning because I was worried about MVS in that game, and I was like, the Bills play a lot of too high. The team that has faced the most pass attempts against too high this year is the Chiefs. And I was like, oh man, does that ding me on Gabe because he had so much downfield work? Then I remembered last year when Chiefs were playing too high in that playoff game, and Josh Allen said, bleep you, I'm throwing over the top, and he just torches everybody behind too high. And I'm like, oh, that's how you break the system.
Gabe's down there somewhere.
Yeah, F it.
Yeah, I think with Gabe specifically, he's not going to be that popular. The optimizers are going to like guys like Singletary, Mostert, Hines, going to love Walker, and that's naturally going to allow you to, if you're saying, Singletary is going to be great at 5,700. You're not going to play, like, it's not going to lead you to Gabe Davis. It's going to lead you more to like the higher salaried receivers.
Exactly. I agree with that as well. Rashad Bateman missed practice again Wednesday due to his foot issue. How much would Bateman sitting impact your view of Lamar Jackson against the Giants?
Their EPA per dropback splits are really worrisome with and without Bateman. It's a minus 0.2 without him and a plus 0.15 with him, but Lamar's had like crazy touchdown numbers. He was way overperforming, one of the highest overperformance numbers since like 2018, 2019, based on what his EPA per dropback was. But the passing success rate itself has been stable, and that's a better metric to look at in small samples. So I don't think it's the huge difference. I think it's just big touchdown swings for Lamar. So I wouldn't downgrade him too much. If anything, it might help me because then I could. Obviously, I like Lamar. I like Mark Andrews, but it also kind of gives me access to Devin Duvernay. So, kind of, I'm okay with it.
I am too for the Duvernay aspect of it. His role is pretty good last week without Bateman. It would bump Andrews as well, which he doesn't need the bump. He doesn't. He's absurd.
Does not.
Oh my gosh.
His target's just nuts.
Yeah. Like I was looking it up yesterday and I was like, is that right? I thought I had like a number messed up or something, but no, it's true. It's like 34% with like tons of high leverage work too. He's absurd. So it would hurt a bit, but I would still view Lamar as being like, I think potentially this might be a hot take, but I think Lamar might be the best single entry quarterback on the slate because of how much interest Allen and Mahomes will generate, justifiably, but we can talk about that later on. Wandell Robinson got in limited practice Wednesday with his knee injury. Kadarius Toney got blipped. He's gone. He practiced, Wandell did practice last week too, but he ultimately wound up sitting. If Robinson does get the green light, any interest for you there in a team desperate for legitimate NFL pass catchers?
I think it's a kind of a leap to assume that he just comes back to like a role.
He did practice last week, which is why I have a tiny bit more. Like, I think it's at least noteworthy because he practiced last week.
Oh, I'm not saying it's not noteworthy.
Yeah,
like,
okay, cool.
They need pass catchers, and we need pass catchers this week, but it also feels like one of the spots where we can't assume that he's going to get a lot of work until we see it because they haven't. I mean, when Shepard's played, like they've sort of peppered him, but other than that, it's been pretty spread out. So I don't think I'd get there myself.
If he gets in a full practice Friday, I will have at least one lineup of Lamar, Andrews, Wandale, because Wandale's 49. Wandale has potential to get some rushing attempts, which I love. I'd have at least one share. I know that like that's not a great process, but also it's a do as I say, not as I do. I'm just letting you know that I would have non-zero number of Wandale lineups.
What about Scotty Miller, 49?
No. Why?
I don't know. We'll talk about the Bucs.
Name stack. Wandale and Rondale.
Eno and Gino this week.
Oh, love it. Okay, I'm all in. Let's do this. We're not doing a Rondale DJ Moore stack. No, absolutely not. Tyrion Davis-Price returned to practice on Wednesday. He has sat since week 2 with a high ankle sprain. Jeff Wilson, good role, but did lose some work to Tevin Coleman last week. How would a TDP return impact the view of Jeff Wilson?
Can't help.
Yeah.
It's one of those. I mean, I know that Wilson had a good role. Like he's clearly a guy that they trust in the red zone, but like Coleman was involved in the red zone too.
Correct. He had the first touchdown. So it wasn't even like garbage time late. It was the first touchdown.
And again, one thing I probably need to do better is look at the like sort of consensus projections and get a feel for like who's going to be some of the guys who are recommended for optimal lineups more. And I think Wilson's going to be part of that.
Yeah, I think he probably will as well based on some early stuff. So I agree with that. I built out a Lamar, Wandell, Rondale stack. It's pretty fun. Just throwing that out there. It's not going to be a good lineup, but it looks fun. That matters for something.
I still have nightmares of the John Ross week.
John Ross week. That happened? I don't know this.
I mean, it happened. I thought he was going to step into a huge role. I played a lot of them, and he, I think, played like 3 snaps.
Yeah, well, it happens.
Yeah.
Let's move now into the bookmaker info for this week. Starting things off with the marquee matchup, Bills at Chiefs. It is Bills as 2.5-point favorites. Total is 53.5. And in the playoffs last year, these two teams went bananas. The regular season matchup, not as fun. But the offense this year have been very good. How high will you be on this game?
About as high as I can be.
Mm-hmm.
I love both quarterbacks. I probably prefer Mahomes solely for the fact that he should be less popular because he's an underdog. Mahomes as an underdog is just weird to think about. I understand it, but I'm good with it. Yeah. We're going to want to play Travis Kelsey. We're going to want to play Stephon Diggs. We're going to want to play Josh Allen. Issue after that is like getting talked into value plays who are imperfect. But if you are looking for value plays, the best place to do it generally is in games that should score a lot of points.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I want low salaried exposure to games that could go bananas. And I think we have routes for doing that this week via Gabe Davis.
The Devin Singletary story.
No, not using single digits. Stop it.
The team that should score 40 every week don't want the running back.
I don't.
I know. I'm saying that's the frustrating part.
Right. I do want that same game parlay though of a touchdown and less than 10 FanDuel points. Please.
He's going to score that first touchdown, and I'm going to be tilting on Slack.
He's going to score 2 touchdowns and still not get to 18 FanDuel points because he's the worst. Can he burn me? Probably not, but I do at least question it.
I think he can burn you in if you don't think about it as like pure FanDuel points and you look at it more as like he can open up the ability to get to the stud tight ends. And also, like, I know the results haven't been there, but he can get you like 14, 15 if he scores.
Think about that sentence. But also, he can get you 14, 15 if he scores. But
at that salary opens up a lot, but also burns us in the sense of like takes away touchdowns from other players in this game. I think it's still reasonable. I feel that.
Oh yeah, it's reasonable. No, it's totally. It is reasonable. That's a fair thing to say. I just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I do like Gabe Davis though. Marquez. I think that's his preferred pronunciation. Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I was worried again. I was going back to the too high stuff, digging into that. The Bills do run a lot of too high, and like you think about Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the way he operates, that's pretty scary. The one other like crazy too high team the Chiefs have faced so far this year is the Chargers. That's all they do. In that game, MVS was tied with Travis Kelsey for the team lead with 7 targets. He had 2 deep targets, which was most in the team. He didn't do anything with them. So I don't think he's a great play. I think there are a lot of paths to failure, but of the guys in the 5,000 range, I feel best about Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Again, I don't feel great about him, so it's not a massive endorsement, but I think he is my favorite guy down there. What are your overall sentiments on MVS?
He's one of my loves this week because you got to account for the salary. Did have season highs in catches, targets, and yards last week. Has not scored yet, which his red zone role is not fantastic or anything, but he does have the ability to score from outside the red zone. And just eventually, if you're on the field, you're involved in a game where there should be red zone plays, like eventually they won't just throw it to Travis Kelsey.
Yeah.
Like eventually a team has to cover Travis Kelsey near
but then they'll do a Noah Gray run or a target to Jody Foster. Like,
that's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
And that's not like, it's not just like a haha kind of joke. It's like, look, he might not get a red zone target even if they run 10 red zone plays or however many red zone plays they might get this week. So like, it's a concern.
Sure.
But as we talked about on Monday, we really got to think long and hard about playing these value receivers because none of them have any floor. I know we don't like talk about floor, but you'd want someone to feel like he can at least give me 8 if things don't go the right way and it's not the worst. None of those guys really have it.
Yeah.
But I think he is the best play down there.
I agree. And like last week, no touchdown against the Raiders. And the Raiders are like the best team for Marquez Valdez-Scantling to face because of the type of defense they play. So it's not a 1-to-1 comparison, but 90 yards in that game. I talked about betting him 12-1 to lead the game in receiving yards, and he almost got there, but then Devontae had that second touchdown. I was like, idiot. I got close, but I think he is the best play down there, but he is still very imperfect. So even though I like him most, I want to actively keep a lid on my exposure to him and rotate a bit down there, like mix in guys like what's Dobbs' salary? Romeo Dobbs?
55.
Okay, so yeah, I'll rotate in Dobbs. I'll rotate in Rondale Moore. We'll talk about in a second. He's imperfect too, but like fine relative to other guys down there. So rotating through with MVS. What about Juju? Because like the reason I looked at the Chargers game is because like, okay, like against the style of defense, Juju should thrive. He had 3 targets in that game. And like he looks like kind of checked out. I don't know. Like it's very frustrating to watch him play right
now. So 3 targets, 10 yards, 1.9 yard ADOT in that game.
If you look at like Mahomes' efficiency splits this year, throwing to each pass catcher, his numbers to Juju are doggy do. And that's concerning because it could lead to fewer targets going forward. So like, I think that Juju, like stylistically, should be the guy, but I also just really do not want to do it.
Does that account for like picks? Yeah, he's got 2 picks targeting Juju.
Yeah, maybe catch it then. Poser.
I mean that if you're looking at like EPA, that'll really skew things.
Catch the ball.
I mean, I'd have to go back and watch those 2 picks to see if
I'm not going to catch the ball.
Okay. Okay. I even in game stacks, like I don't know how much I'm going to get there. If you want to talk about a guy who really can't burn us,
I think that's correct.
I think it's like Juju.
His max yardage this year is 89. So like similar to MVS in that regard. 79 in week 1. He's had 8 targets in every game but 1, but like just doesn't get the kinds of targets that you want. Looking at their overall target shares so far this year, Juju has 16% of the deep targets, 16% in the red zone, whereas MVS has 28% of the deep targets and 11% in the red zone. So I don't know. It's probably dumb to go MVS, but like I can't really talk myself into Juju having ceiling, especially at 64 when he's pretty close to Gabe, who has a ceiling. We know that for sure. I think Devin Duvernay is a better ceiling than Juju as well. Like at 62,
you should get some carries at least, like some creative touches,
some kick returns. My love language is kick returns and red zone rushes for receivers. Okay, let's talk about the quarterbacks here. I think that Mahomes is not as good as Josh Allen, but from a DFS perspective.
Whoa.
But I think he's close enough where you can take the discount or you can pivot there for tournaments because it seems like Mahomes will be less popular. So although for a cash game, I don't know. I'd like to get down, but I have to check first if I can get there. For a cash game, I prefer Allen, but I think for tournaments, I might prefer Mahomes. What about for you?
Yeah, I mean, they're both fantastic. We probably don't need to spend like too much time explaining why. It's more about like the game theory behind it. I would prefer to get to Allen in a single entry.
Sure.
The salary gap is 600.
It's not huge.
The Bengals defense at 36 is probably like the obvious defense play.
Yeah.
I might drop down to the Falcons at 3,000 to get that 6,000 to go from Mahomes to Allen.
It's a Kyle Shanahan revenge game against the Falcons. I'm not sure if you're aware. I just want to let you know about that.
I'm just saying I'm open to it.
Just letting you know that that's a thing.
I mean, I'm not that concerned about.
You should be.
I should.
No. Yeah, I think with Kelsey, I think because he scored 4 touchdowns, I have a bit more confidence in pivoting to Andrews as being like a good pivot. Although I'm guessing Andrews will be the preferred optimizer play because of his target share. So you're not going to get a huge discount. But I think that one thing that I like is having the Holmes at quarterback paired with Andrews at tight end, because that specific combination will be pretty contrarian, I would bet. But
I would honestly, like, if running back were worse, I'd be open to flexing like whoever plays later between Andrews and Kelsey. That's how much I like them this week.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I don't need to do it, and I really can't do it.
I think that's fair. Let's move now to the other 50-point total on the slate. That is the Cardinals at the Seahawks. Cardinals, for some reason, 2.5-point favorites. Total is 50.5. The Cardinals have been very frustrating so far this year. So how are you handling them here? And which Seahawks, other than Kenneth Walker III, are you targeting?
I'm going to start with the Seahawks because they're more fun.
They are.
Outside of Kenneth Walker, I'm going to target Gino Smith. I'm going to target Tyler Lockett. I'm going to target DK Metcalf. So
I assume that you don't know my stance on Gino. Pretend I am random person on the street who you're talking to about Gino Smith for some reason.
Yeah.
How would you explain why you like Gino this week?
So I think you have a fantastic game environment this week, and there aren't many other ones. Gino Smith also has very clear stacking candidates with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, who I think off the top of my head have 28 and 26% target shares respectively.
They are at 28 and 26, with both guys having at least 30% of the deep targets.
So yeah, that's nice. Arizona 19th in pressure rate, 29th in adjusted pass defense. He does have double-digit rushing yards in 3 of his 5 games. That's not like pure rushing upside, but in a game that could be back and forth, there's a little bit extra there. The salary is low at 74. I think it's just a spot where if you like this game, and this is not always the case, but if you like this game and you like Kyler Murray, you should be receptive to Geno Smith because quarterback play usually correlates pretty well with the opposite side. We just don't talk about it much because you can't stack 2 quarterbacks on FanDuel unless you're playing Superflex. So I think that the path for Geno to having obvious stacking candidates, you can stack them with Kenneth Walker and get access to like every yard that this offense puts up in a good game. I think that there's a lot to like.
Yeah. Seattle actually ranks 15th in pass rate over expectation based on your numbers, which means they're throwing enough. They are facing a defense that I don't fear a whole lot. Geno does run a little bit. He's not looking to run, but he does run at times. And I think that he has a path to, can I say 35 points? Is that too high? He scored 31.7 against Detroit. That might have been around. He had 49 yards and a rushing touchdown, but like, I don't think 35 is outside of his range of outcomes.
I was going to say 30.
Sure.
I think he could probably get to 35. I could try to look up and see how many times he actually gets there in my Sims, but
yeah.
It's reasonable. There are no other quarterbacks that I can make a case for as good as that one for a huge game. So
I think another aspect of this game is that we noted, I think, on the podcast at one point that Arizona was running super slow to start the year. That is no longer the case. They have sped things up recently from a pace perspective. So this game, if you look at your adjusted average pace over on numberFire is the second fastest game on the slate behind Tampa Bay at Pittsburgh, which I have no interest in. Like it's a kind of fast game. We know where to stack it on both sides, honestly. I think it's really good. I'm curious how popular it will be relative to Buffalo versus Kansas City.
I would imagine not very.
Like is it a clear secondary one or is it a 1A, 1B? So if it's a clear secondary, then my interest in Gino / Kyler goes up a bit more.
I think it's clearly secondary for people.
I think so too. I hope so. Because I think this game is very
I don't think Walker's not going to be secondary, but like Gino, and also if Kenneth Walker's mega chalk,
pivot to the passing game,
which remains to be seen, that's naturally going to leave Gino, Locket, and Metcalf undersalaried for what they should be.
I'm fine having Gino, pass catcher, Walker all in the same lineup. Like that combination does pop up in perfect lineups pretty often. So no objections for me having all that in there.
And with the market shares for the receivers,
for sure.
Market share in the backfield for Walker, like if Seattle puts up 42, like those guys are going to do a lot of that damage.
You don't have to answer this, but do you have a preferred target between Locket and Metcalf, or is it just both?
Both, really.
If you had single entry, if you had to pick, or would you just duplicate the lineup?
I would likely do that.
I think that's fine. I agree.
Metcalf has a better role. Locket historically has like torched the Cardinals.
Okay, so there's that. I like Metcalf a little bit more. Better red zone role, 40% target share in the red zone. Lockett's at 13%. Locket has more deep targets though, which is pretty fun. Locket used to be like this super volatile receiver, but he's actually had again, I hate this word. He's had a really good floor this year. I think he has a path to a ceiling. That combination where you're not getting floor at the expense of ceiling is really fun. So I prefer Metcalf, but Locket very much a really good option as well. Cardinal side of this one, where are we at on Kyler? I think for this week, I'm going to use at least 4 quarterbacks, which is a little bit more than I want to do. I'm going to use Allen, Mahomes, Lamar, definitively. Likely to use Gino. Kyler's that 5th wiggle, the flex guy. If do I get there? Are you in the same range for him?
Yeah, I'm with you there. If I'm looking to pivot away from Allen and Mahomes, I'm looking at Lamar. I know I can't just say I'll find 500 everywhere and anywhere, but I will find 500 to get to Lamar, even if it means playing the Falcons defense. I will do that. I don't think I'll get to Kyler. I'm trying to take the arbitrage play of if Kyler puts up a huge game, I don't see this one just being a completely one-sided affair. The Cardinals have not shown any of that ability to just dust a team.
Yeah.
So I think if Kyler has a good game, Gino has a good game, and honestly, if one of them has a good game and the other doesn't, it might be Gino that has the good game and Kyler's just okay.
You can play super flex lineups on FanDuel. I'd have both in this game just for funsies.
Yeah.
Marquise Brown's salary is up to 82, but I think that's fair based on the way he's been used. Rondale Moore, 56, had 8 targets this past week, but with AJ Green being back, he did shift back into that stupid Rondale role where he's getting a lot of bunny targets. I don't think that's enough to disqualify him at 56, but it does make his path to a ceiling a bit more clouded, I would say. And then Zach Ertz at 6,000. How do you feel about those 3?
Brown, I think I can really only put into stacks. I don't think I'll be up there in salary very often.
Yeah.
And if I am, it's more realistic that I'm in the mid 7 range, and I'll be on the other side of this game with Locket or Metcalf.
Yeah. I agree.
Seattle's been bleeding yards after the catch to receivers. They are 4th in yards after the catch allowed and 3rd in expected yards after the catch allowed. I think that benefits Rondale, even if he's getting those bunnies. And I think Ertz is in that conversation of if you're not playing Andrews and Kelsey, you need some path to a ceiling. Nobody really has yardage upside at tight end aside from those guys and maybe Njoku. And maybe if Kittle returns to who he used to be.
Yeah.
But Ertz then has some upside in terms of he could catch 2 touchdowns in a game that shoots out.
He also did have 3 deep targets last week. That's his first deep targets of the year. So 16 plus yards downfield. Didn't do anything with them, but maybe that means there is some untapped yardage upside. I still don't really have a ton of enthusiasm there for him or Higbee. Prefer to go Njoku because the yardage juice is there, but I think he's totally fine. Let's move now to the Ravens at the Giants. The game with the third highest efficiency in my model on the main slate is actually this one, Ravens at Giants. Most of that is Baltimore, obviously, but they're ranked third among single offenses on this slate. But the Giants aren't bad. Like, they're not totally dusty in terms of projected efficiency.
That's because Saquon's been playing quarterback.
I mean, it actually is in part because of the early down rushing efficiency being crazy high. Like, that actually is a part of it. Total is low, 44.5 points. The Giants team total is 19.75. So the question here is, do you view this game as being good enough to pivot to Lamar and Andrews over that Bills Chiefs game? And where are you on Saquon?
In a single entry, maybe. If I'm building multiple lineups, obviously.
I think they're the best single entry stack. And you just kind of hope that Bills Chiefs hits the total and doesn't go massively over it.
My question to you is, are you stacking Jackson and Andrews?
Yes. I don't know. Sorry. I didn't let you finish. Sorry.
So you're stacking them in single entry. Are you also jamming in Saquon?
Likely no.
Okay. Because that was my question. And I think
I do it with no bring back. But
I don't love the idea of that because
fair.
I just don't.
I think that's fair because my process is to have a bring back for my quarterback at all times. But I think what I would do is have interlocking. So you go Kenneth Walker at running back, you run it back with either Rondale Moore or Hollywood Brown. I'm not going to have a bring back for Stevenson or Breece Hall, but then I have two wide receiver slots, and maybe that's a Gabe Davis, Marquez Valdez, Scantling stack, something like that. To still get exposure to that game, but just not use it via the quarterbacks. So I like to have a bring back, but it's not a rule for me. It's a preference.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think with Lamar too, he's had 21, 42, 40 FanDuel points and then 15, 15. I mean, I'm just rounding down to the number there, but that's because he was, again, overperforming touchdown expectations a ton. His passing touchdown rate was crazy high. The past two games, he's had one each. Has not rushed for a touchdown in either of those games. It's basically balancing out. So he should be somewhere in the middle, like moving forward. That should, for the most part, be your expectation for all guys always. But that's still like 28, 30 points very easily for him with some better touchdown luck, closer to his average. But
yeah, I think that, like, we talk about probabilities. The odds that Lamar Jackson is the highest scoring quarterback on this slate, not that much lower than Allen and Mahomes. I wouldn't think. You probably have that number, but like the actual odds of it, I can't imagine them being that much lower.
I don't run that one specifically.
Yeah, but like,
I do it for a single game, but not for the.
Yeah. Devin Duvernay, will he be a guy you use outside of game stacks or just when you're using Lamar?
I think he will be solely for the fact that I need receivers in that range because if anyone's been paying attention, it's very clear like what our core approach is
and where our fears lie.
And it's going to come down to like a Duvernay and not Duvernay Andrews, but like Duvernay Kelsey versus who, like Marquise Brown and Njoku, kind of 2v2, something like that, roughly equivalent. I think it's a very fair 2v2 there.
Yeah, I think so as well. So Duvernay will be, if there's no Bateman, obviously, I'll have him outside of game stacks, but it's kind of similar to MVS where like you see the flaws, but you can still justify going that way regardless. So I'll have Duvernay outside of game stacks, but there are flaws there for sure. Let's dig now into our trends discussion for week number 6. Starting off with you, talking about the Buccaneers because they're facing the Steelers. The Steelers stink. So do not talk me into bring back here. I will leave the podcast and force you to do the rest by yourself. But what do you see with the Bucs on their side of things?
Yeah, I mean, like they got a high implied team total. We're looking at ways to get access to good offenses. It doesn't feel like the Buccaneers are like a FOMO team, but we're going to be looking at the Bills. We talked so much of the show already about the Bills, Chiefs, Cardinals, and Seahawks, but like you never want to overlook a team that is in a position to score points. There are basically two standouts in this regard this week: Green Bay and Tampa Bay. The Bays holding it down with good implied team totals, but situations where we're not really looking into them. And I just wanted to kind of check out the Buccaneers and see, are we okay kind of missing out if they do hit their potential? The Bucs are by far the fastest team in the NFL based on my adjusted pace numbers. They're ranked third in pass rate over expectation. This game is the fastest matchup of the week. That's pretty fun. We do have a good list of quarterbacks. One of the few pocket passers who is still capable of a huge game, unless you think that Tom Brady is dust, which Jim's making a face, I'm sure.
I didn't say it.
Brady has that ability still. He is passing net expected points per dropback is 0.16. NFL average is 0.06 this year. If you adjust for opponents, he's 0.09 per dropback over expectation. He's playing pretty well from an efficiency standpoint. The touchdowns just haven't really been there. He's got 1.4 per game. The Steelers are 12th in adjusted pass defense. It's not enough to worry me. They're 31st in pressure rate, which is helpful for an offensive line that's average according to PFF and pass blocking grade. Against three similar defenses, so like non-elite defenses, Brady is averaging 309 yards and 1.7 touchdowns. He is fifth in next-gen stats passing score when not pressured, but he has suffered 6 drops in that split. Maybe Sleepy Tom has had some bad luck in these.
It's not Sleepy Tom, it's Tinder Tom.
Prime time games, but maybe there's a little more that's underlying, and maybe there's a breakout ready to emerge. I think at the bare minimum, he can maintain this offense and maybe a little bit more, and maybe we don't want to discredit him just yet. The question is, what do we do with that information? Because I don't think we're going to play Tom Brady this week. I can see the case for it if you want to get really different. I don't think you have to do that. But what about Leonard Fournette? He led the Buccaneers with 11 targets last week, despite a snap rate that fell to 61%. The Steelers are 21st in adjusted rush defense, but he's 8,500 after a good game. So if we look at the receivers, Mike Evans has just one game with better than a 20% target share, and that came back in week 1. He has in-game target share, if you look at his games played, of just 18%, which is a team high. He's still averaging 7.3 targets, 79 yards per game, 24% red zone share. I'm having a hard time justifying it at 7,700. Last week, with the injuries that they had going on, Scotty Miller 7 targets, Fournette had 11, Evans 8. Cade Otten had a 92% route rate last week, 5,000.
Rate's back this week, I think.
Oh, he is? I thought he was going to be out again.
No, he was at practice Wednesday. He didn't look. There were some videos that were like, should he be out there? But I think he'll play.
I thought he didn't practice. That's my bad. Don't play Cade.
He probably shouldn't have. The videos looked weird, but that's just me reading into it.
Is this a super dusty 26.5 point applied team total, or are you tempted at all by any of these pieces?
Tempted, sure, but I think that it's one of those situations where I ask, could it burn me to not stack the Bucs? Absolutely, it could. Tom Brady could throw for 5 touchdowns.
Yeah,
he could do that very easily. But what's the probability he hits 5 touchdowns? So what's the odds that I regret it? Not that high. So he kind of needs to have 5 passing touchdowns for me to regret not using him on this slate. So
or sneaker too, but
yeah, which he will do. But I'm okay with being lower on this game. I think because I like the ceiling potential of other options so much, there are a lot of things that need to go wrong for me to really regret not using Brady, I think.
I'm with you. It was just, we're looking at the teams that we're talking about in different ways.
Yeah.
Hey, the Buccaneers have that. I do feel more worried about Brady and the Bucs, not being on them, than I do about the Packers.
Yes. By a wide margin. I fully agree.
But the Packers are also in that conversation where it's hey man, they should put up points on the Jets according to the bookmaker odds. So you don't want to just overlook those teams entirely.
Yeah, I think it's fair to talk about them, but with Lenny, 23.5% red zone share in 2 games with his reduced snap rate, yardage, 96.5 yards to scrimmage per game. I had the under on his rushing plus receiving last week. Whoops, didn't go well there. But I like other guys more. Let's talk about some of the other guys right now, because we talked on Monday's show about loving all of Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, and Breece Hall. Their workloads are great. The one problem is that all three of those guys are actually on teams that are underdogs. And I know a lot of people don't want to use underdog running backs. So I wanted to dig in and see how much of a concern that should be under the assumption that all three are popular. I will note that Breece Hall, pretty low in projected roster rates for this week, early in the week. Very intriguing to me. But across the past 3 years, 98 running backs have been popular in the FanDuel Sunday Million while being underdogs. Of those 98, 23 of them hit 3x value. So 3 times their, 3 times, whatever. You know what 3x value
3
is.
points per $1,000 in FanDuel salary.
Thank you. You do the rest for me, please. You're right. 3 points per thousands of dollars. Of
so like
FanDuel
18
salary.
points at $6,000 salary.
Yeah. They had 3x value. 23% rate hitting 3x value. The rate for popular running backs who are favored, 21.3%. So actually a bit higher for the underdog running backs who are popular. If you look at all running backs on at least 1% of rosters in the FanDuel Sunday Million, so just viable plays basically, the 3x rate for them was 15.4%. So 23% for underdog running backs who are popular, 21.3% for favored popular running backs, 15.4% for the position among all viable plays. So they outperformed the overall baseline by a big margin, and they slightly outperformed their popular favored position mates. The other component here is that they all came, all these guys that we're talking about come with mid-range or lower salaries. If we narrow that scope, of the 98 underdog popular running backs, 61 of them had salaries of $7,500 or lower. Of those 61, 18 hit 3x value, which is 29.5%. So that's a very big number. In general, we can feel okay about chalk at running back. You mentioned that earlier on this year. We don't need to pivot that position as much. We don't need to worry too much if the chalk on that is on a team that's not favored. And we can worry even less if that running back comes with a low salary. Personally, this just further locks me into using those guys we discussed, who I think are undersalaried regardless of their roster rate. And again, Breece Hall might not be popular, but I want to ask you, how are you viewing them right now, knowing we've got the full scope of this slate?
Yeah, obviously, I like them. They're my 3 core running back plays because of what they open up at the rest of the position. I was taking a look down here, like sorting by salary and looking at like some sort of 1v1 situations, and looking at like who's a favorite and who's an underdog. So like we have Ramondre Stevenson versus Aaron Jones. Jones obviously a pretty big favorite against the Jets. I'm not saying like that just because one of these guys is on a favored team that he's going to be more popular, but I think people would take a look at that and say like, Aaron Jones as a favorite versus Ramondre as an underdog. Also Jeff Wilson versus Breece Hall. I'm seeing Jeff Wilson pop up a good bit in the consensus projections. I would take Breece there
straight up
10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
He's like classic David Johnson getting downfield work.
Yeah.
Even like if you jump down, it's a little bit less with the 6,500 range if you look for like pure pivots. But that could trickle down into like, again, Devin Singletary is probably going to be a bit popular because he's on a favored team and the salary's low. So look, I looked at the pivot numbers. We don't need to pivot too much at running back. The one thing that popped out here is like maybe we're overrating Breece because he's not popular, and generally the consensus is good at figuring out. And it's not I'm not talking projections. The projections are fine for Breece, but like the popularity numbers, if they're not going at Breece, are we missing something? I will say though, as someone who had a lot of Breece and needed a lot of Breece in season long as well last week, he could have had a much bigger game if he scored some touchdowns. So,
like if Braxton Berrios throws a better block, he's got 30 points. So
he almost had 3 touchdowns.
Yeah,
if memory serves.
They had 5 rushing touchdowns in the game, and he had 1, and he still scored 26 or whatever FanDuel points. Like they had a quarterback and a wide receiver who had rushing touchdowns. Like even give Michael Carter his 2, but like weird. See, I think that like the one path to failure for Breece is that the offense collapses. Because I mean, I think that Zach Wilson has played better than perception the first 2 weeks, but like, do I feel confident that he will lead a Jets team on the road in Lambeau? No, like there are paths to failure there for sure. Do I feel confident enough to still feel good about him? Yes, I love Breece Hall. If you had to pick one to fade in a single entry lineup, as in like, who do you think has like the flimsiest path to a ceiling between Ramondre, Breece, and Kenneth? Who are you picking?
Pure ceiling?
Yeah, like it like that's the thing about single entry is like who has the flimsiest ceiling. That's kind of the way that I view it.
It's not Walker.
Okay. I would have guessed him personally.
You think?
Because the lack of passing game work, yeah.
Yeah.
So like I'm going to use him in single entry, but if I were to fade one, it might be Walker. I'd still be above weight on him.
He could get scripted out. I would say Breece, given
That's fair.
The huge
Stevenson is lowest though, correct?
Yeah, I feel best about him.
I agree.
Straight up.
Okay, let's move to your second trend. Talking about that Miami-Minnesota game. What you seeing there?
So I think pace matters. We've talked a lot about pace over the years. It's an important metric, but I think it can be really overstated. I've probably been guilty of that in the past. But we want teams that run plays, and like pace matters. Play volume correlates to FanDuel points pretty well, unless there's like super high efficiency, and that can be pretty fickle if another team is able to milk the clock. So it's not really worth nitpicking like between a few seconds per play in terms of like situation neutral pace or whatever it is. But that said, we have what could be a fun game, or at least there are fun names in this game between the Vikings and Dolphins, but they have the slowest combined average pace. I should say average pace, not combined pace. According to, that would be the same if I add them up, but that doesn't make any sense to do. According to my adjusted numbers, a lot of that is
52 seconds per play. That's crazy.
A lot of that is due to the Dolphins. They rank 31st. They are 26th in offensive plays per game. I just look at rushes and passes. I don't care about field goal attempts and punts and stuff. Their games combined for the 28th most plays from scrimmage. Minnesota's 13th in pace, 10th in plays, and combined their games have the 13th most offensive plays. So like they're not too bad in that regard. Miami has been involved in fun games for sure, but they can also slow things down. And in week 5 particular with Skylar Thompson, who is going to start again this week, and maybe chalk it up to like game plan was thrown off, but I don't think he's going to be like letting it rip this week necessarily. But they played at an adjusted pace that would be last in the NFL. They had a pass rate over expectation of minus 10.4 percentage points to rank 26th for that week. Minnesota's 12th against the run. That's still beatable, so like they could just keep it on the ground as much as they want, milk the clock. We're kind of looking at like, I'm struggling with this because like, again, there are fun names in this game. Both pass defenses are non-threatening, according to numberFire's adjusted metrics. But Miami could screw this one up, and frankly, Minnesota could screw this one up too. We talked on Monday about Dalvin Cook's salary being too high for his role. Justin Jefferson, we can love Justin Jefferson, but it's hard for me to sit here and say I'm going to prioritize Justin Jefferson at 9,200. Tyreek's not 100%, but seems like he's going to play. He's 8,000. I think Raheem Mostert could be viable at 65. This could be like a high-scoring, tight back-and-forth game, or it could be like low-scoring and over-salaried for the guys that we'd actually want. So what are your thoughts?
I think if we were getting a Teddy revenge game here, I'd be pretty interested in it because like I think Teddy can push the ball a bit. Teddy's efficient. We can feel good about that. But Thompson's like more of an athlete. And I'm worried that I think that they will change things up from the way they did last week for what you said. You know, he didn't get any practice last week, probably because they had to get Teddy ready for the QB1 snaps. But like, are they going to be fast? No. Are they going to be efficient?
They haven't been fast with any quarterback.
Right. Are they going to be efficient? My money's on no. Like, I don't think Thompson's like totally out to lunch. Like he played well in the preseason. He got drafted for a reason. He had some okay games in college. Also, he's not like he's 2 years older than Justin Jefferson, which is like wild. He's 25 as a rookie, which is absurd. But like, so I'm not saying like, oh, I can't use them because Thompson, but like it does lower me with Thompson being in there. And that does hurt the Vikings. We were low on Dalvin Cook to begin with because his workload has been underwhelming. 83, that's high enough where I'm just like, I have a lot of running backs I like. I need to cross people off. I'll cross him off. Jefferson and Thielen. I think Thielen is more in play. Not than Jefferson. I think Thielen's more in play than Cook because of salary and because he is a wide receiver in a salary range we need to target. If you look at the games that the 4 games since Irv Smith had a higher route rate, 20% target share for Adam Thielen, 24% in the red zone, 17% deep. That's not the worst role for that range. It's not the great role either, but like I'd rather use him than Cook, I think, in this game, personally. But
I agree. It's scary to be out on Justin Jefferson, and it's not like a nitpick. I'd still play him if I could, if I had like salary to burn, but really hard to justify him this week. Unless I'm playing like Singletary, Walker, and like Nyheim Hines or something.
Yeah.
But I don't anticipate doing that very, very often.
No. So, yeah, I think I'm just a bit lower there. So let's talk here about the 49ers. Their offense with Jimmy Garoppolo, their team total pretty high this week at 25. Matchup with the Falcons, not bad. So I want to dig in and see what they've done since Garoppolo became the starter. And they've been pretty balanced. A 52% early down first half pass rate, bit below the league average of 53.6%. That's for all early down plays, I should note. That's not a one-to-one comparison. Whoops. Anyway. And it's led to decent work for Jeff Wilson, and he's been efficient. But he has not topped 21 adjusted opportunities yet. His red zone share is 29.4%. Now likely getting Tyrion Davis-Price back. Tevin Coleman side of the active roster. Tevin Coleman revenge game. Don't forget that. I think that Wilson will come back to earth a bit. So I don't want to go there at 72. That would shift our attention to the passing game. That's also not great, I wouldn't say. Garoppolo's 8 out of 7.4. Brandon Ayuk is the only guy averaging more than 1 deep target per game. In those 3 games, Deebo Samuel has 29% of the overall targets with 5 of 9 targets inside the red zone, but he doesn't have any carries inside the red zone in this time. I know I'm a parody of myself, but that was a big part of his appeal last year when he was scoring at such a wild rate is he get a lot of high leverage rushing attempts, and he hasn't been getting that recently. Deebo is at 76 yards from scrimmage per game in this 3-game sample. He's the most appealing piece here, but even he's flawed at $7,600. Ayuk 58, Kittle 57. Ayuk has 1/3 of the deep targets, but as mentioned, that's not a lot of deep targets overall. Overall target share 19%. Kittle 18% of the overall targets, 22% in the red zone. We at least know that Kittle has a path to a big game because he's good. We might want to spend down at tight end this week. The Falcons, about average against tight ends based on your adjusted FanDuel points per target numbers. He had a plus match with Carolina last week and didn't do anything with it. So I have at least some interest in Deebo, Ayuk, and Kittle, but nobody really gets me super jazzed. Is that a mistake? Where are you at in this offense?
The models love Deebo this week.
Do you love Deebo?
Not really.
Okay.
I was looking up since week 3. Early downs first half, pass rate 53%, 52.9% for San Francisco. In that split, league average 53.7%. So a little bit below average.
So I was right. Okay, cool. I thought I pulled the wrong numbers. Apparently I did. It was a mistake, but I did it. It was an accident, but I did it right. Woohoo. Hooray, Jim. So you're not super into Deebo. I'm guessing that's because we have Metcalf and Locket right there, right?
It's really hard to look at Deebo and want to go with him over guys who are way more fun in a more fun game. Like, not that Deebo's not fun. That's not what I'm saying. But like his role in this offense.
I would say that if we look at the 7,000 range, which is Michael Thomas, Christian Kirk up through Mike Evans, I would say Deebo's 3rd in that range for me behind Lockett and Metcalf. But the problem is I have them both a full tier above him.
Yes.
So will I get to Deebo? Potentially. Will I seek him out? Likely not.
So since week 3, Deebo's at, I'm sorry if you said these numbers, 56% red zone share.
Yeah.
2/3 of the end zone targets.
Well, 56% target share on the red zone. His red zone share overall, I think, is about 29%.
Or sorry, 29%.
Yeah.
He does have a catch rate over expectation of minus 13 points. So like maybe there's just some
regression
underlying juice and some regression coming his way. Then again, he has overperformed his expected FanDuel points overall. So like I don't know.
What
I
about
would rank
Kittle?
him third there, but he's like not a. I think he'll be very popular. Again, I seem to see him projected well, various places. I think it's fine given the matchup in a dome, all that kind of stuff. But I would rather play Locket and Metcalf.
What about Kittle for you? Because we do have some interest in spending on a tight end. I think Njoku is definitively above him for me, but is Kittle in that discussion with Higbee and Ertz for you or no?
He is at the bottom of that tier.
Okay.
I'm trying to look up at. So Atlanta against tight ends,
About average.
they're about average. They are 0 for 4 in end zone targets allowed. So that should probably, maybe he scores this week. He's fine, but I can't rank him above Njoku.
I can't above Njoku either, but I think I could consider him above Ertz and Higbee because like it's like the FOMO thing. Like, what are the odds they burn me for not using them? Probably not that high. And like Kittle might not either, but at least he'll come at a lower roster rate, I'd assume.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And totally out on Jeff Wilson.
Yeah. I probably won't have any.
Yeah,
and like that could hurt me. He was fine. He was very good last week, but I think he had like 20 FanDuel points or whatever. Decent efficiency. He's run really well this year, which is like a deviation from what I would have thought. But when I can go Brees Hall at 71, $100 lower, honestly, I prefer Aaron Jones over Jeff Wilson too.
Yeah,
at 73. I'd rather go that route personally.
Yeah, but both Wilson and Jones favored pretty heavily too. So I think it's another, reason.
I think Jeff Wilson will be popular. I don't think he should be. Worst chalk, Jeff Wilson or Devin single digits?
Wilson at salary.
I agree. Anything else on the 49ers?
No.
Will you get to NAIU? Because like I think that my approach will be just to like differentiate in that range and make my core everyone else. This will be the one spot I differentiate. So like I will have a mixture of guys down here. Does Ayuk get in that mix for you?
Yeah, because the way that I build my lineups, especially this week, is going to be plug in the running backs that I like, the quarterbacks, and stack them. And then I'll just be sort of duplicating those lineups and making small tweaks from there.
Yeah, I think that's probably a smart way to play things for this week. Okay, weather, only one game of note. Hallelujah. That's actually in Miami for the Dolphins and the Vikings. Wind speeds there, 13 miles per hour. Nothing to downgrade things too much, but hey, confirmation bias. Bleep that game. So let's move now to our positional plays for week number 6 on FanDuel. Starting off at quarterback, Brandon, who are you targeting there?
I probably should have Josh Allen here, but I do have Patrick Mahomes. I'll stick with Mahomes. Although ideally I'm getting to Allen in a single lineup. I want to play him against you in our head-to-head.
Yes. So I think for cash games, I lock in the 3 running backs first of Hall, Stevenson, and Walker. Allen might be the next guy I put in there.
I think so too. But Mahomes is projecting to be substantially less popular than Josh Allen, which I understand because he's an underdog. And as your numbers have historically shown, that's a good thing for quarterbacks. When trailing, Kansas City has a pass rate over expectation of plus 15.7 percentage points and a raw pass rate of 71%. Should run more in an important game. I think that he could throw like 45, 50 times and just have like a huge game. And if this game busts, it busts. But even then, I don't know how you look back and say, like, I was glad that I didn't play Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen this week. Like, quarterback popularity doesn't matter enough.
Yeah.
My second love is Gino Smith for the lineups where I do try to be different. I think he's 4th behind Allen, Mahomes, and Lamar. I'm going to rank him above Kyler and just take like the arbitrage. But I mentioned a lot of this stuff already. Arizona, just okay in pressure rate, 29th in adjusted pass defense. Smith, double-digit rushing yards in 3 of 5 games. Easy to stack, and I think he also stacks well with Kenneth Walker. Don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, I think he does as well. Gino, Kenneth, and then DK or Locket, I think that's totally fine as well. I think that Gino is probably my quarterback for this week. I've been bumping him up. I think I'll wind up there. And the only question is, do I get to 5 with Kyler? Do I stick with 3 with Mahomes, Allen, Lamar? I don't know. It's one of those options, I think. My first love is also Mahomes. It's a lower salaried exposure to Bills Chiefs. I need salary savings this week. He's had 30 plus FanDuel points in 2 out of 5 games. He's had 25 plus rushing yards in 3 straight, and he tends to be more likely to run in huge matchups. That's impactful to me. Again, I want Allen for cash games, but I think that for Mahomes, kind of need the savings, and I do like the roster rate discount. My second love is Lamar Jackson. I think that it is a great week to pivot to Lamar. You talked about this with regards to Andrews and pivoting to tight ends when they might not be the chalk of the slate when they're good. I think that applies to Lamar as well. It's still a pretty decent game from an offensive perspective. Lamar's had 2 straight down games to keep his roster rate in check. One of those was influenced by wind. Other one, very good defense on the opposing side. It's Cincinnati. He can still drop 40 on you. So if someone outscores Mahomes, Allen, I think Lamar's probably most likely to be that guy. If projected roster rates wind up having it where Lamar is actually like on par with them, then I'll just have him be in the same tier as them. But I really think Lamar is a really fun play for single entry this week. Running back, we have the same 3. Let's alternate. You start with Stevenson, then I'll go Hall, and you can finish off with Walker.
Cleveland is allowing 1.15 yards over expectation per carry.
How?
Which is the second worst behind the Chargers, who are at 1.90, if memory serves. But they did play rushing yards over expectation legend Nick Chubb. Mm-hmm. They're 32nd in rushing expected points per carry and adjusted FanDuel points per carry allowed to running backs. Ramondre got a lot of rushing work last week. He can get all the receiving. I think that workload wise, he projects really well. Even I know it's a little bit scary to like play Ramondre over Aaron Jones.
No, it's not
because of the offense, but
no, it's not. It's really not.
But Stevenson's one of the guys this week for us,
and he is the guy we are most confident in of this trio.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So I'll talk about Breece Hall here. He is facing the Packers as a pretty big underdog, but the Packers ranked 25th against the rush by my numbers, which combine a prior with 2022 data. My 2022 only model actually thinks the Jets are a little bit undervalued in this spot from a betting perspective. I'm not going to bet them because I can't do that to myself, but it thinks they're a bit undervalued. They're playing decently well. Zach Wilson's efficiency numbers are okay in his first 2 games. I love Hall's role at 71, 122 yards from scrimmage per game in his 3 as being the lead back for this team, 41% red zone share. Like, come on. If we look at each guy's most relevant sample, Hall's red zone share ranked 2nd on the slate, excluding Tyler Algier, because that was like 2 plays. 2nd on the slate behind Christian McCaffrey in red zone share in each guy's most relevant sample. Stevenson is after him at 40% in his 1 game sample, but Hall is awesome. So talk to me about Walker now.
So 8 carries, 88 yards last week. I will point out very low success rate, had just, big play, no targets, but did run 12 routes. Arizona just middling on the ground, dead last in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to running backs. I think a fair question here is, yes, could he get scripted out if they fall behind? I mean, yeah.
I think it's a maybe.
It's a maybe. Also, is it a...
Because
can Arizona...
would you rather have DJ Dallas out there or Kenneth Walker if you're trailing? I'd probably still rather have Ken.
You don't draft them where you did not to use them, especially to have them run routes last week.
Yeah, if Travis Homer were active, I'd be more concerned. But Travis Homer's still on IR for 2 more games.
Sure. I think a fair question to ask here is, would I like Rashad Penny at 6,500 in this matchup? I would love him.
Yeah.
And you kind of take away the minimal work that Walker had with Penny there.
Exactly.
I think it's like a plus.
Couldn't agree more. So let's go to wide receiver. What are you looking at there?
Tyler Lockett. There's a little bit of a fear of chasing here. And I've talked already this season about why we shouldn't do that, but it's not chasing when the workload is there. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not banking on a multi-touchdown game again, but he's got a 26% target share, 40% air yard share. He's averaging 3.4 downfield targets per game, which for me is 10 plus yards downfield. Metcalf does have the better red zone role, but Lockett has torched the Cardinals. I don't do a whole lot of defensive scheming stuff, but since 2020, he's got 6 touchdowns in 4 games against the Cardinals. He's put up 267, 115, and 98 yards. That's fun.
Mhm.
Realistically, I don't love a lot of receivers that I can get to like beyond that. Um, I love Metcalf, but I can't play the guys above them frequently. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna jump down below 6,000 for two guys with first being Marquez Valdez-Scantling. If I'm rolling the dice on a receiver, I want him on the field in a good game. MVS does that. Season best last week in catches, targets, and yards. He's by far the best air yards value in my model. Checks all the boxes for like what you want. There's still a low floor, but we don't want floor. We want ceiling. Speaking of floor, maybe Rondale floor, maybe.
Wow.
His ADOT, as you alluded to, fell from 9.9 yards in his debut to 2.2 last week, but still had three downfield targets in that 2-game sample. I know it's a different role-ish, but red zone target on each and a red zone rush in week 4, Jim. Thought you'd like that.
100% exposure. Rondale Moore.
Seattle's bottom 4 in yards after the catch allowed and yards after the catch allowed over expectation this season. I think that if you want to play Andrews and Kelsey, you're going to have to play 2 value receivers. And I think Moore and MVS would be the 2 that I would target most.
I think I agree with you. Dobbs is the one other guy I'm considering there.
I feel better about Moore than Dobbs. Dobbs could get a little bit forgotten.
I mean, I hate that offense. So
yeah,
I'll take that. That works for me. My first love is DK Metcalf. I like Locket a lot too, but 28% target share for Metcalf, 31% deep, 40% in the red zone. He has shown legit yardage upside. Great game. Very low salary compared to his role. So I think that I'll take the Brandon approach and just sub one guy out, have a Locket lineup, sub out him, put in Metcalf, keep the rest the same.
I need to do that because I've had so much tilt the past few weeks picking the wrong guy.
Yeah. And for me, the only reason not to do that is oh, well, what if I get one piece wrong? It's if you're playing DFS properly from a responsible gaming perspective, you're not playing more than you can afford to lose anyway. So it's okay if you lose everything for a week.
And you
should be okay. Don't play more than where that's a bad thing.
Absolutely. But you also want to maximize whenever you hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If you're playing everyone to cover your bases so that you can break even, just play cash games, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. My second love is Devin Duvernay, assuming that there's no Rashad Bateman. Last week without Bateman, 7 overall targets for Duvernay with 3 deep targets. Facing the Giants, which is a pretty good matchup. Duvernay not had the yardage upside yet, but he showed the building blocks for yardage upside last week. So Duvernay 62 if there is no Rashad Bateman. I will have Lamar stacks. Duvernay will be part of those as well. My third love is Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He's the lowest salary guy with an easy path to upside. 17% target share, but 28% of the deep targets this year. He had 90 yards last week, which is enough to show that he has yardage upside, but also not enough to generate a lot of interest in him. I would consider Rondale Moore. Other guys that are if you have to really rotate through, I think I probably will lop off Cobb. I think that Dobbs is the better guy than Cobb. Ayuk is a consideration. Adam Thielen's a consideration. Alec Pierce actually has yardage upside because he's the alpha in the Colts receiving room. I think though it's really just use the guys in the good games in MVS, Rondale Moore, Duvernay a bit. I think that's probably where I want to go. Tight end, what you doing there?
Probably going to end up with more Mark Andrews than Kelsey. He has 3 games with at least 15 FanDuel points this year. Kelsey has 4, but if you exclude Kelsey, all other tight ends have combined for 4 if you don't count Taysom Hill as a tight end. He has 2 games with at least 20, excluding Kelsey. The rest of the position has 2 combined. That ceiling is realistic and attainable for him in this matchup. He has a 33% target share on the year. No other tight ends above 26%. If you account for downfield and red zone work, he's at a 34.3% weighted target share. Next up is Kelsey at 24.4%. I think Andrews is a standout play. I know we like Njoku, but Tyler Higbee at 62 I don't think should be completely forgotten. 25% target share. He's second on the season behind just Mark Andrews. That's 9.6 targets per game, a catch rate over expectation of minus 7.7 points. No touchdowns yet, and Carolina's 29th in adjusted FanDuel points per target allowed to tight ends and dead last in catch rate over expectation. if you give him a decent Higbee game and a touchdown, like you can kind of overcome like not a 4-touchdown game from the studs, but a good game from the studs.
Yeah. Higbee's fine. He and Ertz are the same thing to me.
Yeah.
Who do you prefer between those two?
Higbee.
Probably
less competition.
Correct. Yeah, probably correct. My first love is also Mark Andrews because it's going to pivot to him. If we assume that the 4-touchdown game from Kelsey really drives up his roster rate, that game drives up roster rate. I know the projected roster numbers right now do have them pretty even. I think when the dust settles, I think it will skew towards Kelsey based on point chasing and stuff like that. But
when
Andrews,
Kyle Pitts settles,
it's pretty funny. I'm good. I'm proud of you. 33% target share, as you said. 41% in the red zone, 39% deep. $500 discount from Kelsey is not too bad. My second love is David Njoku because he has yardage upside. He's had 70 plus receiving yards in 3 straight games. He has a 19% target share this year. Even if you include week 1 where he was used as a blocker a lot, I want to include that because that's within his range of outcomes. So a 19% target share, 27% in the red zone, $1,500. I think that he's more athletic than a lot of the guys the Patriots have. So I think Njoku makes a lot of sense. While you were talking about Higbee and Andrews, I was building out a Lamar Andrews stack, accidentally put DJ Moore in instead of Rondale Moore and almost threw up my microphone. So we avoided calamity there somehow. Defense. Talk to me.
I like the Saints, 3,800. Joe Burrow's been sacked at least twice in 4 or 5 games, at least 6 in 2 of 5. 8.6% sack rate, which is 2.3 points higher than the NFL average. And again, I joked about the Falcons at minimum salary, but I don't think that it's completely off base. Their San Francisco's passing success rate without Trent Williams on the field is down to 38% from 49 with him, and that's with Jimmy Garoppolo playing.
So I have this Lamar lineup with Andrews, and it has the big 3 running backs, some receivers I like, but it's $100 shy. I might jump down to the Bengals to make it work. Or sorry, the Falcons to make it work. I don't think they're totally out of play. My love is the Bengals. They'll kind of be like the default one that I lock in. The defense is playing really well this year. They've had a decent pressure rate. Jameis might be back, but he throws picks. He takes sacks. We love Jameis for defenses. No Michael Thomas, no Chris Olave at practice Wednesday. So I think the Bengals are like the default play for me at defense, but I will go Falcons at times if I need to in order to jam in everything I want to jam in for this week. That's all we got here on the podcast. Brandon, any final words of wisdom for the good listeners before we send them off to fill out their winning lineups for this week?
If you think that we went this whole show and underplayed like Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson, and I think we played up Stephon Diggs well enough, but like Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, McCaffrey, if you think those are the guys this week and like you view it completely differently, feel fine in that, because there are cases to be made for a lot of different ways. I just think there's an obvious way to build this week, and I'm going to stick with that.
I am as well, especially given the way things look from a projected roster rate perspective. I feel more confident in that approach this week as well. That is all that we have here for this week. We'll be back with you on Monday to wrap it all up. That's live on the FanDuel YouTube page, 10 a.m. Eastern, and also on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed after that. So go subscribe, hit subscribe on the FanDuel YouTube page, hit the like button as well. Those of you watching, we appreciate you as always, and hit subscribe on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Brandon, people have questions for you on Twitter. Where can they find you there?
I'm on Twitter at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for this week. Good luck to you with your Week 6 NFL DFS lineups. We'll talk to you once again Monday to wrap it all up. This has been the Heat Shack Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.